How do Amish families keep food cold during the hottest months of summer without depending on a standard electric refrigerator? The answer is not as simple as saying that all Amish families use one particular method. Amish communities vary considerably. What is permitted in one church district may not be permitted in another. Some progressive Amish families use propane-powered refrigerators, while plainer communities may avoid modern refrigeration almost entirely. But long before refrigerators appeared in every kitchen, rural families had already developed practical ways to protect milk, butter, vegetables, meat, and other foods from the summer heat. Many Amish households still use versions of these methods today, and unlike a propane refrigerator or bags of commercially produced ice, the 5 methods in this video can provide cooling without a monthly electricity bill. Some require preparation, construction, or physical labor, but the cooling source itself is essentially free. Here are 5 ways Amish families can keep food cold throughout the summer. The first method is harvesting and storing natural ice. In areas with sufficiently cold winters, ponds and lakes can become a source of refrigeration for the entire year. When the ice becomes thick enough to support people and equipment safely, families may gather for an ice harvesting day. Instead of treating it as a job for one person, members of the community often work together. The ice is marked into large sections and cut using saws. Long poles, hooks, and ice tongs help guide the blocks through the water. The blocks are then pulled onto a sled or wagon and transported using horses. This is demanding work, but an organized group can harvest an impressive amount of ice in a relatively short time. The blocks are taken to an ice house, which is a specially insulated building designed to prevent them from melting. Older ice houses were commonly insulated with natural materials such as sawdust, wood shavings, or straw. More modern structures may contain thick foam insulation. Sawdust was especially useful because it trapped air between its particles. That trapped air slowed the movement of heat into the ice house. Workers could stack layers of ice while packing insulation around the blocks and between the ice and the walls. The ice house was usually built in a shaded location, sometimes partially below ground. Meltwater needed somewhere to drain because standing water would cause the remaining ice to disappear much faster. It may seem impossible for ice collected in January or February to survive until August, but a properly designed ice house can preserve it for the entire summer. In especially efficient structures, some ice may remain when the next winter arrives. Whenever a family needs refrigeration, they remove only the amount of ice required and immediately close the building again. Limiting how often warm air enters helps protect everything still inside. The ice may then be placed in an ice box, cooler, milk house, or other insulated storage area. Although building an ice house costs money and harvesting ice requires considerable labor, the ice itself is free. Once the system exists, a frozen pond can provide months of cooling without electricity or propane. The second method is using an old refrigerator as an ice box. A refrigerator does not necessarily need to be connected to electricity to be useful. The same thick insulation that keeps cold air inside an operating refrigerator can also preserve coldness produced by a block of ice. Some Amish families repurpose an old refrigerator or chest freezer for this purpose. The motor and electrical components are no longer important. The appliance is simply an insulated cabinet. A large block of harvested ice is placed inside, generally in a tray or compartment that can contain the melting water. Food is then arranged around it. Cold air naturally sinks, so the position of the ice matters. Depending on the appliance's design, placing ice near the top can allow cold air to move downward through the storage area. A chest freezer already traps cold air effectively because the cold air does not pour out as easily when the lid is opened. The family must also have a way to remove meltwater. If water is allowed to collect around the food, it can create sanitation problems and cause the ice to melt faster. This arrangement functions much like the old-fashioned ice boxes used before electric refrigerators became common. Traditional ice boxes were usually wooden cabinets with metal-lined compartments and thick insulation. An iceman would deliver a new block whenever the previous one became too small. An unplugged refrigerator is simply a modern version of that same idea. The appliance should remain closed as much as possible. Every time the door opens, warm and humid air enters. Frequent opening causes the ice to melt faster, just as it makes an electric refrigerator work harder. Families may therefore organize the contents carefully so that they can retrieve what they need quickly. Items used regularly stay near the front, while less frequently used food remains farther inside. A thermometer can also be placed inside the cabinet. This is particularly important for meat, milk, and other highly perishable foods. A container that feels cool is not necessarily cold enough to store every type of food safely. If the refrigerator or freezer is already available and the family harvested its own ice, this provides refrigeration without paying for electricity, fuel, or commercially produced ice. The third method is taking advantage of a cool basement or root cellar. If you have ever walked into a basement on a hot summer day, you have probably noticed how much cooler it feels than the rooms above it. That is because soil changes temperature much more slowly than the surrounding air. While the temperature outside may rise and fall dramatically, the earth several feet below the surface remains comparatively stable. Amish families can take advantage of this natural insulation by storing food underground. A basement is not normally cold enough to replace a refrigerator. You would not want to assume that raw meat or fresh milk can remain safe there indefinitely, but it can extend the storage life of many vegetables, fruits, jars, and preserved foods. Potatoes, carrots, beets, cabbage, onions, and apples can all benefit from the right underground conditions. Different foods require different combinations of temperature, humidity, darkness, and ventilation, so they may be stored in separate bins or areas. A root cellar takes this idea even further. It may be constructed beneath a house, dug into the side of a hill, or built as a separate underground room. Thick earth surrounding the walls protects the interior from direct sunlight and extreme outdoor temperatures. Ventilation is especially important. Many root cellars have a low intake vent that allows cooler air to enter and a higher exhaust vent that allows warmer air to escape. Opening the vents during cool nights and closing them during hot days can help maintain a lower temperature. Humidity must also be managed. Root vegetables generally benefit from relatively humid conditions because dry air causes them to shrivel. Onions and garlic, however, need a drier environment. Good storage is therefore not simply a matter of putting everything in one underground room. Shelves keep jars organized and off the floor. Wooden bins may be filled with sand, straw, or another material that prevents vegetables from touching and helps regulate moisture. A basement or root cellar will not create refrigerator-level temperatures during the middle of summer. What it provides is a naturally cooler and more stable environment. For many foods, that difference can be enough to prevent rapid spoilage and reduce how much valuable ice must be used elsewhere. The fourth method is using cold spring water. Some farms are fortunate enough to have a natural spring on the property. Groundwater emerging from deep beneath the soil can remain surprisingly cold even when the air outside is hot. Before rural electrification, springhouses were common on farms throughout America. Amish families living on suitable land can still make use of the same principle. A springhouse is a small structure built over or beside a flowing spring. Water is directed through a shallow stone or concrete channel inside the building. Containers of milk, cream, butter, or other food are placed in or immediately above the cold water. The food is not necessarily submerged completely. Jugs and covered containers may sit in the flowing water, while their tops remain safely above the surface. Because the water is constantly moving, it carries heat away from the containers. Warmer water leaves the building and is replaced by fresh, cold spring water. The spring house itself adds another layer of protection. Thick walls, shade, limited windows, and the cooling effect of the water help keep the interior much cooler than the outdoor air. A similar method can be used around a cold well. Food may be lowered into the well in a secure container and suspended above the water, where the air is cooler. It must be protected from contamination and secured carefully so that nothing falls into the drinking supply. The obvious limitation is that not every farm has a dependable spring or suitable well. The water supply must also be clean, reliable, and protected from animals, runoff, and other possible contaminants. But when the geography is right, moving groundwater provides refrigeration continuously. It does not require an electric compressor, delivered fuel, or harvested ice. The earth has already cooled the water before it reaches the surface. The fifth method is creating a cold pantry using cool night air. Even during summer, nighttime temperatures are often lower than daytime temperatures. A carefully positioned pantry can capture some of that coolness and hold on to it during the day. A cold pantry is generally placed on the coolest side of the house, away from direct afternoon sunlight. In North America, that often means the north or northeast side. The room may contain a window or vent that can be opened after the outdoor temperature falls. Cooler night air enters, while warmer air is allowed to escape through a higher opening. Early in the morning, the window and vents can be closed. Heavy walls, insulation, curtains, and a tightly closed door help slow the return of daytime heat. This will not turn the pantry into a refrigerator, especially during a humid heat wave, but it can make the room noticeably cooler than the kitchen. That matters because kitchens frequently become some of the hottest rooms in a house. Cooking, baking, sunlight, and constant activity all produce heat. Moving food into a shaded room separated from the kitchen can significantly improve its storage conditions. The coldest shelves are generally close to the floor because cool air sinks. Foods that benefit most from cooler temperatures can be kept lower, while items that tolerate warmth may be placed higher. Families may also place containers against an exterior stone wall or basement wall that remains cooler than the surrounding air. This method works best when combined with good household routines. The pantry door remains closed. Windows are shaded during the day. Warm food is allowed to stop steaming before being stored, and preserved goods are arranged so that older items are used first. Once again, a cold pantry is not appropriate for every perishable food. It is primarily a way to reduce heat exposure, protect preserved goods, and slow the deterioration of produce. When combined with a basement, spring house, or supply of harvested ice, it reduces the burden placed on the family's coldest storage area. These 5 methods show that refrigeration does not always begin with a power cord. Frozen ponds can supply ice. Insulated cabinets can preserve it. Underground rooms borrow the stable temperature of the earth. Springs provide a constant flow of naturally chilled water, and cold pantries capture the coolest part of the day. The exact arrangement will differ between Amish communities. One family may have a propane refrigerator, an ice house, and a basement. Another may depend on a spring house and extensive food preservation. A plainer church district may accept one method, while a more progressive district allows another. None of these methods eliminates the need for food safety precautions. Traditional knowledge and careful temperature monitoring remain important, especially when storing dairy products, meat, or other highly perishable food. But they demonstrate something modern homes often overlook. Keeping food usable does not always require making an entire space mechanically cold. Sometimes it means understanding shade, insulation, airflow, water, ice, and the stable temperature beneath our feet. If you enjoyed learning about these practical Amish cooling methods, leave a comment and tell me which one surprised you most. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.